No, so I went to school at OU in like 90, 91 when they were in shackles.
Yeah, we'll get started. Thank you all for coming this morning. We appreciate your participation, and we ask for, first of all, decorum today, more than anything else. This being a beautiful Sunday morning on a holiday weekend, we look to enjoy this time and this space, and really our mountain together. So I ask that of all the candidates, and I ask that of all of you as we go through the process. Just a little bit of review, serving as the moderator. I too asked all the candidates for decorum and positivity, I guess, as we look at the questions. I asked all of them to draw their number from a hat, and so that's how we'll go through the first questions. There have been a series of questions that have been put together for the candidates that were follow-up to basically their bios or information that they provided. I'll read those questions to them. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. After that, we'll allow a 1-minute follow-up from either the opposing candidate or from someone else if it's a general question, okay? There will be no participation from the audience other than at the end of the first hour, there are 3x5 note cards, and you may all put a question on that note card and put that in the basket that's over by the desk. We also ask you to enjoy the food that was provided by a number of volunteers. There's always good food on the mountain for sure. I remind you all that it's being recorded, and we've tried to open up the recordings to other individuals that are not able to be here, are traveling, and through other forms of social media. I was reminded by one of the members in the audience that we want to thank all the candidates for participating. I know when I served on the board, there were times when we had to encourage someone to run because there were no candidates that would run for the office. And I think it's wonderful that we have plenty of candidates, sorry Pat for putting my back to you, that we have plenty of candidates that are willing to run and to serve our board. With that, do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, any questions from all of you?
Are we allowed to go get food too?
Pardon?
Are we allowed to go get food as well?
Yeah.
Get water.
All right, with that, Eddie Lund was the first person, and he's sitting over on the fourth side. Fred Maess will be the second question. Pat Armstrong will be the third. Pat is sitting here. Fred in the middle. Ron Abbey is fourth, and Ron's on the far end. Claudio Biltoc in the middle will be the fifth question. And then our treasurer candidate, Stacy McElhiney, and I had that correct? All right, good. So Stacy will be our sixth. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. And I'll read the question, and then we'll go from there. Ed Lund, your biography lists 3 areas of focus. As treasurer, how would you partner with membership and the board to wisely manage the properties and investments, provide a detailed view into the association's financial status, including but not limited to line item details of expenses, and ensure up-to-date financial information is easily accessible by the membership?
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. You in the back? I was the lucky winner to get the first question. I also speak very quickly, so if I start speaking too quickly, just let me know. I'll try to slow down. I'm aware of it. So, long question. I only have 90 seconds. But first and foremost, when we talk about assets here on Lone Mountain Shores, the 2 largest assets I look at are the docks and our capital account, right? So the docks, I believe, last I heard, were valued over $500,000. Capital account, last I saw, was a little over $800,000. Those are significant assets. And working with the community, the board, even folks outside of our own Lone Mountain Shores community, I look at it and those are things that we need to protect, right? So from a doc standpoint, and listen, I don't go into this with any preconceived notion that I have answers. I want to learn first, but it's about making sure that we maintain those docks, right? That's an asset that we don't want to see just disappear. I know that we've been expensing certain things so that we can continue to do repairs, potentially even replace at some point, maybe getting to that particular time when we need to do things like that. But it's something that needs to be continually evaluated. Capital account, I know right now we're using CDs and money market. I'm all for money market on short-term cash accounts. I think there are other things we can do outside of the CDs, right? I mean, I know that currently right now there's a coupon being offered by the Las Vegas Raiders to fund their practice facility. And it is financed and wholly assured by the financial strength of the NFL, right? Same lockups as a CD, 10% return, right? So that all of a sudden kicks off, even if we only put 25% of our total capital account in something like that. At 20,000.
Thank you very much.
Oh. I gotta speak faster. I didn't even get to the.
I know.
So I got the part of
We knew that there were going to be a number of questions, and we don't want to silence any of the participants or the audience. But we really wanted to move it along and ask as many questions as we possibly can.
It's fair. I'll be more briefer next time.
All right. Stacy, would you like to do a follow-up, or okay? Any other candidates? Would you like to make a comment? Fred, can you elaborate on your commitment to repair the division we see in our community through collaboration, compromise, and inclusion, the three words you used? Members of the community barely seem able to talk civilly with one another.
Yeah, I can address that in a couple of quick points. My position, really across the board, is based on a few concepts, and that is true transparency. Everyone should be able to see everything. Unless there's some legal or unknown at this time, reason why something should be hidden. No community business should be hidden from any community member. Transparency and inclusion. What does inclusion mean? It means we gather as many residents, owners of the community, and we inform them, and we let them make the decisions for our community. Everyone should be involved in that. You go back 2 years and we had votes where there was 150 total respondents out of what, 575? My goal is going to be always to get that up to as many respondents as possible. Everyone should have a voice in the community, and I want to maximize that voice. I think that alone helps bring people together, because it's not about one person's opinion over another person's opinion. It's a vote, it's a community decision, we all have the information, we all see what's really going on, we can make a decision. I fully support that, always have. Anything that suggests anything else, I'm being misquoted and misunderstood. That's always been my position, and it always will be my position.
Thank you, Fred. Claudio, would you like to do a follow-up?
Just a quick note is transparency is great. It's great across for everybody else. It's just that there are some limits on transparency on board actions and processes. Like it's in the covenants. So unless we change the covenants, some of those things are not discoverable, such as communications between the board and committees, and communications between the board and members of the community. Those are shaded clearly in the covenants. There are not to be released. Votes is one of the other things that I believe is that should be released. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Claudio. Next question for Pat Armstrong. If elected ARC liaison, what is the primary goal, and can you explain to us the initial steps planned to execute that goal?
Okay, my primary goal as the ARC liaison would be to revise the architectural guidelines to be consistent with the covenants. My initial steps would be to rewrite and clarify the architectural guidelines with the ARC members and present those revisions to the board for approval and or modifications. I've already done some of this in the past 2 years. We've been making covenant changes and architectural guideline revisions. Some of the things I'd like to do is include into the architectural guidelines the unwritten rules that have been followed in this community for years, such as maintenance of putting concrete driveways down over gravel. You don't have to have an application to do that. The other thing would be to include clarification on the legal definition of clearing versus removing trees or cutting down the trees. People don't know that there's a legal difference between the two of them. Clearing means disturbing the soil. Cutting down tree means just that, cutting down the tree. So that's really all I have.
Thank you. No follow-up, Ron?
No follow-up.
Any other board member wish, or candidate wish to comment? Okay. Number 4. Do I have this right? Is it you, Ron, or is it Stacy? It's Ron. It's Ron. Okay. Ron, I'm going to ask you your number 2 question, and then we'll follow up later with maybe that first question, which was a follow-up to the one that Pat had. In your campaign statement, you listed several areas you want to improve in the ARC and in the ARC liaison position. Can you give a couple specific details on how you would accomplish some of those?
There's a 7-step process I put together, and basically what it is, I want to define what the ARC's responsibilities really are. I know our governing documents tell us and give us a brief description on what it is and what we're supposed to be doing. But let's bring the ARC into the 21st century. Let's make sure that the community, whether you're starting a new project or you're new to the community, you're going to start your first project, that everything's defined and understood. And how is that, can that happen? Well, I have to get people from the community to get involved, to form a community if the board allows that to happen, and then we'll move forward with it. I want to take the process and put it online. Create an ARC page off of our website so that all the documents, all the guidelines are clear and concise. And if you start a project, why not be able to fill out your form, put your plans on, upload your plans, upload everything that is required for your project right there on the website, and then you can see how it's progressing through the process. That's part of it, and I want to make questions that I hear constantly get asked, and sometimes they feel like they're redundant. Well, let's put those questions out on the website so everybody can see them. Everybody can have the answers.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment on that. Putting all the plans onto the website for everybody to see, I think that's a privacy issue. I think that's only information that the board or the ARC committee should be able to see, and I just think that's a privacy issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Number 5, Claudio. This is up to you. If elected, what changes instituted by the current board do you view as positive for the community and therefore you would be committed to maintain? Are there any changes instituted by the current board that you would seek to revise or eliminate?
I would hate for the boards to start becoming one of those tit for tat, where a board comes in and turns back whatever the other ones did. I think some of the things they've done well is efficiency and costing. Some of the maintenance contracts that were not being effectively maximized and costing us money, not many results. Getting multiple bids for various things on the mountain, getting volunteers involved, and creating some savings in that. I like those. I liked some of the clarification of the covenants where there were some challenges. I know some people had challenged the ability of the board to mow the grass on the streets, because that was not, specifically, so that got clarified. So a lot of those things I like. I like some of the way they're looking at the budget and savings over the next 10 years. I think, as Eddie said, there's some capital assets that we need to look at to have the affordability to replace them. So I'm okay with a lot of those things. I don't know if there's anything, I wouldn't go and turn back anything that they've done. And if I have a couple seconds, if that's related to the lawsuit, I think we need a decision, a legal binding decision on which way the covenants are interpreted to go forward. I think going back to ambiguity and arguments and different interpretations will not help the community heal. So I would definitely not go back and turn that over.
Thank you, Claudio. Fred, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of that. I think we've had some some tit for tat the last few boards, and I definitely oppose that as well. But I think right is right and wrong is wrong, and we're going to need to, as a community, figure out what that is moving forward.
Good. Thank you, Fred. Stacy, one of the commitments in your campaign statement is to be transparent. What does transparent mean to you in the treasurer role, and what specific actions would you take to be transparent?
So transparency to me, I'm sorry, I hate this. So transparency to me means be forthcoming, to be very clear and communicate your information clear, concisely, and accurately. And in order to do that, again, I would do exactly that, to be forthcoming, conduct my business with the HOA is in a transparent manner where information is openly communicated and presented accurately and in a clear and concise manner.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on that? Ed, would you like to comment?
I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, I agree with that. You want transparency to be, clear, accurate. I would just say available as well. Like I think currently today, like if you go out and look at the 2013 budget, we have budget but no actuals, and obviously we've paid for things so far this year. So it'd be nice to have a kind of a living, breathing document where people can see as those expenses are paid.
Good. Thank you. Okay, going back to you, Ed will keep you on the microphone, rotating back to number 1.
Faster.
Faster. Okay.
Faster? All right. You've got a minute and a half.
Minute and a half.
Modernizing LMS technology to facilitate participation by all owners is a major theme for you and the others. What does that look like to you?
Great question. I actually believe that technology, we live in I guess a world today where a lot of people work remote, right? So technology is used in a lot of different capacities, and I think here it can be utilized more so than we are now. I know that we've started to do Zoom meetings for the board meetings. I think that's great. I think that should continue. I think that can be actually even extended into other meetings that are maybe not official monthly board meetings where people can have the access to either look in and participate, or maybe they just want to see it later so that they have a working knowledge of what's going on within the community. I also think technology can be utilized for a lot of our voting procedures. I know that there are other communities, other HOAs that use voting electronic solutions, platforms. That makes it a lot easier than having to remember where my envelope was that I received and sign it and send it back. Not to say that I'm incapable of that, but I'm just saying it makes it easier if you can have it on your phone. Everybody works on their phone. I think they say like 95% of the country right now has access in their hand. In addition to that, I think that there are things that we can be doing with the website in order to push, newsletters and additional communication. One-time events that might come up. Maybe there was even just, it could be social. Like I would love more people to be at the annual picnic, right? Or things throughout the summer. We come down quite a bit. I would love to have everybody over and do things, but I just think that there's ways to be able to disseminate that information, and electronically is kind of the way that I feel like is low cost and easy for people to use. Is that 90 seconds?
Thank you. Yep, you got 2 seconds left. Stacy? Would anyone else like to comment on technology?
I think it's a great idea. One of the first things after we bought here was a meet and greet that I forget who set it up, that was Zoom. The one concern that I have on Zoom is recording. And especially in 2 state consent states, where we do have members everywhere. So we just, as long as we go through that, I think we no problem with that. It'd be great to get everybody involved, especially those who are not off the mountain like we were for a couple of years before we started building.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I participate in a lot of Zoom meetings with LMU, and they always have a little post-it that says this is being recorded,
right,
you accept recording, right. So that would be acceptable to everyone.
Yeah, you can even have a pop-up where you have to consent that you realize and recognize you're being recorded. Yeah, there's ways to do it. Like I said, we live in a world now that everything is
Teams or
right, and it's great. So it doesn't work.
And I think and thank you for volunteering. I think you pay for some of that. I think it's like $90 or something like that a year to get over 500 access. So it's not a big deal.
We're out of time. Yeah. Anyone else wish to comment?
Let it go.
All right. Going on to Fred, a question for you. You mentioned the following the following two items in your campaign statement. Can you give specific examples of how you plan to balance the authority of the board and the ARC committee with owners' rights and open the community business records financials to all owners to maximize, to the maximum extent of the law?
Yeah, sure. To pile on Eddie's comment there for a second, the portal, the web portal, as I envision it, something I use every day in my work in various companies. They all have web portals, and it's an amazing tool because I can have all the information from every interaction I've had with a particular company at any minute. So I don't have to keep that information separately myself. I can go back and review our entire business relationship. I see that for LMS as being important also. So every owner should be able to sign on to the web, to a portal. A portal, I don't know if you know the difference between a portal and just a web page. Portal's interactive. And I can request information, get it in real time. Right? So that's kind of how I see things evolving. Now, agreed that there are some things that can't be put on there, and I disclaimed that in my first answer, that there are some things that will need to be reviewed. The first part of the question is, I want to answer it like this. As Americans, we all have governing documents that our founding fathers put together for us, right? And all of those documents tell us what the government is not allowed to do. Government is not allowed to do a lot of specific things. Okay? When we get into HOA regulations, what does it tell you? It tells you what homeowners are not allowed to do. And that's all. Okay? What I propose is to balance that. And I propose to do that with a homeowner's bill of rights, so that you have rights as well. Very specific. If you don't agree with a board decision, you have some recourse. I'm not saying you cannot follow it. I'm saying there's recourse.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good. No, you're fine. Claudio.
To be fair. I grew up under communism. I want owners' rights and property rights. The issue is we are living under covenants. When everybody that bought property in Lone Mountain Shores, you signed a document that you will live under the covenants and bylaws of the community. That is what governs how we behave. So we change it through an established process, but there's nothing that the board is doing, any board, over the last 23 years, if it's within the covenants or interpretation of the covenants as allowed in the bylaws, that's what everybody signed up for. And it's not infringement of real property rights. That's what you acknowledge when you bought property in Lone Mountain Shores. I looked for property that had no HOA. I couldn't afford it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pat, in your campaign statement on the message board in 2021, you stated, "I also was the primary partner to deal with conflict resolution at my firm. This was stated as part of the reason owners should vote for you. How have you used that experience to make a positive impact on LMS in the last 2 years?"
Well, first of all, conflict resolution does not mean there's not going to be any conflict or it's going to be easy. It's a tough way to go sometimes. First thing you have to do is identify the problem, a problem statement. You have to say, what is the problem here? The problem here are short-term rentals allowed per our covenants. So we as a board have ahead, and we got 3 non-biased legal opinions. Again, they're legal opinions. And based on that, then you move forward to get a judicial ruling. That's the only way this can be resolved. I believe, and we believe, that's the best solution for this community, and will be a positive impact as the issue will finally be settled after 20+ years. Also, as part of conflict resolution, I have helped rental owners in this community develop plats, draw up plats and site plans for them, even though we have a difference of opinion. I have no animosity towards them. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Pat. Ron, would you like to comment?
Basically, I'm going to sum it up as simple as possible. Stephen Covey has 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand before you try to be understood. Make a win-win situation, and first things first.
Okay, good. No, Claudio,
I think
we'll forego that, okay? All right. Ron, we're back to you. If elected ARC liaison, what is the primary goal, and can you explain to us the initial steps planned to execute on that goal?
Well, the first thing we got to do is come up with a new art committee, and I'd like to make it a committee of the people, of all the people, and once we get all the people in place, then we need to move forward with trying to revisualize, re-image the ARC. I'm not saying that the ARC is not run properly or not, but I interpret things, I've experienced things that I disagree with, and I'd like to change those. I would like the ARC to be for the people and their projects, and I'd like it to be as simple and straightforward as possible. That's, I think, a big challenge for the ARC committee. As the ARC liaison, I'm a part of that ARC committee, and but I'm not the chairman that'll run the ARC committee. I would like to get an ARC committee that represents all the people, whether they're full-time, part-time, or off the mountain.
Thank you. Comment?
I think the art committee does represent all the people in the community, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, Claudio.
Bingo.
From your campaign letter, you state that you supported the lawsuit rather than using another path, such as going to the community members or using mediation to settle the issue of short-term rentals. Please share with us why you think a lawsuit is the best path.
I said actually that I supported their attempt to get clarity. There's 5 reasons, basically. There is no common agreement of short-term rentals on the mountain. I have a certain interpretation, Mr. Maess has a separate one, Mr. Lund has a separate one, there's a number of you that have one, so there is no common understanding. There is no interpretation of the covenants the same way regarding, you know, short-term, regarding single-family homes, regarding commercial enterprises, and so forth. Compromise was tried and failed significantly, miserably, I would say, because there was no agreement, there was no give, and 2 boards ago they canceled it because there was no way to move forward. There was issues with commercial stuff. You know, there was issues with length of rentals. There was a lot of issues that they couldn't come to a compromise. The other board was threatened with lawsuits by both sides. There were the current board was threatened with lawsuits for both sides to satisfy them. And in the last year's board meeting, one of the short-term owners got and told the board that there's a lot of the communities against short-term rentals. They wanted that resolved, and then that lady threatened lawsuit or using up to any available recourse, including judicial, to do that. So I believe at that point, there's no way you can come together and say, kumbaya, this is it, without an adult in the room, the adult being the legal board. So that's why I thought the community needs that in order to get a starting point and move forward.
Thank you, Claudio. Fred, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that I believe that everybody in this room and every owner on this mountain is in fact an adult. Okay? And I believe that our covenants specifically state that before anything else, we apply binding arbitration to these types of situations. That binding arbitration is meant to do several different things. One of them, limit exposure to the community. Okay, that's the big one. Because sure, we can have a judge, we can have a jury, whatever the case may be, find the outcome for us, but we're going to pay. We're going to pay big. It costs a lot of money. The reason attorneys exist in the world today is because adults like us can't come together and find a resolution on our own. And I think we can do that. I think we're capable of doing that. Last time around, it was not guided properly. This time around, it will.
Thank you.
Can I ask 10 seconds?
Stacy, go on.
The covenants actually allow, there's binding arbitration there, but there's also a section that allows the board any available recourse, including legal means. So the board has both options in there, because that was not taken out when that other section on binding arbitration was put in there. So the board, the covenants again are unclear, need to be clear.
Okay, thank you. All right, Stacy. The current board has made several changes to voting requirements, including signing ballots and the need to register with the board. For the first time in over 20 years, based on these changes, the person commented, "I really don't know if my vote will be counted in this or future elections. If elected, would you support continuing these requirements, and what will you do to restore residents' confidence that their votes are correct in the mailing and that their votes will be counted?"
I absolutely support it. I don't know of a better way to assure owners that our votes are being counted, free of bias and confidential, than to turn it over to a third party, to an independent third party CPA firm.
Thank you. Ed?
I have no problem with third party counting the votes. I think it's nice to have an independent third party. I would say though that, you know, it's like anything. You put junk in, you get junk out, right? So what are the rules and the information that's provided to the third party in order to count those votes? And I think that's what actually, when we talk about, I think transparency was the previous question, is what should be allowed and provided to the community, right? So we know what was actually set and what were the parameters that were given to that third party so that we understand how those things are covered.
Privacy.
Thank you very much.
We talked about privacy. Where are we signing our ballots? When we go to cast ballots in the local, state, and national elections, we don't sign our ballot when we go to the ballot booth. We sign in, and if you send the
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron. Let's go back to Stacy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, but when you're sending it to an independent third-party CPA firm, you're signing your ballot. And my signature to me means something. When I sign something, I'm authorizing whatever. I'm authorizing payment. I'm saying I reviewed this. So that is my vote. So I'm okay with that. But it's not public for the rest of us to see. And so I'm absolutely okay with signing your ballots and submitting them to the CPA firm. And it is my understanding, again, you are correct where there is some ambiguity there, sorry. But it's my understanding that the CPA firm sends out the ballots as well. So they do the process.
The board.
Okay, so I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
And again,
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
They get delivered to the.
All right, we'll go back to
Thank you.
silence, please, from the audience. We'll go back to Ed. What is your plan for getting us back to financial stability in light of the expenditures of $130,000 and counting on the lawsuit to stop short-term rentals?
Good question. 130,000. That's a big number. First, obviously, like I said, I told you guys earlier, I didn't come here with like, this is the solution. You know, I think first you got to come in and you got to learn, see where we're at. We've been fortunate as a community. We've run on a $30,000 surplus for many years, so I don't think it's a situation where we have to come in and make drastic changes and huge amounts of risk and things like that in order to get us back to a stable financial state. That being said, if you look at the 2023 financials, given the number for a lawsuit, I think we're going to be over budget by about 30,000 to 40,000. So we basically negated a year plus of some of that surplus. To get us back, I mean, first and foremost, I truly believe that this should be a decision of the community, right? Short-term rentals, I know that's what we're kind of all up here, split for. I don't see why there's not a situation, I think we talked about clear definitions and interpretations and opinions. If we can just create a clear definition of short-term rentals, everybody votes on it, so we know exactly what we're doing moving forward. That eliminates the lawsuit, that eliminates $130,000 of expense, that gets us back to where we need to be, into that surplus, that we can regenerate that egg. Like I said, we're in a good place. I told you earlier, capital accounts are over $800,000. I think there's some more creative things that we can do to take on no risk, but additional interest rate returns. So I don't think we're in an unstable place right now. I think there was some cost cutting in regard to expenses of maintenance, things like that, that have helped offset. But we definitely need to be proactive in our approach moving forward. We don't want to get to a point where we have to make changes. We want to be proactive so we get in a situation where everybody's in agreement how to move forward, and we're still on stable environment.
Thank you. Stacy, would you like to comment as a treasurer candidate? Claudio, we've given you extra time. We'll kind of forego that, and we'll come back, okay?
Yes, you're trying to. Whatever.
Don't, let's not get down in the weeds here. We're giving everyone ample opportunity to have comment, and I think we've been fair in giving each candidate their time and ability to comment. I will ask them for some closing statements at the end too, if they would like to make that. So we'll go back to Fred. What priority will you place on infrastructure? Specifically, what is your plan to solve the issues residents face related to garbage removal, roadside mowing, and pothole repairs?
Well, infrastructure is important to us here. We're pretty far out, from Claiborne County, so sometimes we get ignored. So maintaining those relationships are important. Pothole repair is something we can manage. I don't think we've maybe put enough emphasis on that in the past, and we will moving forward. Trash removal is a priority of mine. I have 3 different paths to go forward to restore trash removal from the mountain. I'm not going to get in the weeds to tell you exactly what those are, but I'm very confident at least one of those will come through, and I will restore trash service to the mountain. That is important. I don't want anybody throwing garbage bags in the back of their VW Jetta or their Mercedes SUV to take it to town. I think that's unrealistic. I think that's unfair. We have $1 million homes back here, but we have to cart our trash to town. That's ridiculous. That has to change, so that will change. Other infrastructure things, I think, there are other improvements we can make with the docks. I think there's some underutilized areas that we could maybe help make more utilized by refining them a little bit or even changing them. But again, that's going to be a community decision, not my decision. As a president, I don't get to determine actually what's going to happen, in my opinion. I poll the community. I find out what the community wants, and then we move forward with that. And so anything's on the table, I guess, at that point. We'll have a capital budget for those types of things, and we'll explore each year, and we will maximize our spending.
Thank you, Fred. Claudio?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Looking at the challenges that the current board has had against even cutting grass on the side of the road, spending money for trash dumpsters will probably need to be a covenant change because it's not allowed under the current rules and covenants. There's a lot of companies in town that are not providing services to the mountain. You can't get a porta potty on the mountain anymore. You can't get sheetrock delivered in your house anymore. Concrete is becoming an issue. So that's not a one thing. The first company that picked up trash off the mountain quit after the first year. And I personally have no problem putting my trash in the back of my car and taking it in town.
Thank you very much, Claudio.
I don't.
Pat, homeowner associations who have walked the short-term rental road have said that the issue never gets settled until the community comes together to resolve the issue. Why do you believe a judge's ruling will settle the short-term rental issue?
Well, I believe the Lone Mountain Shores community is working to resolve this issue legally. Both sides are very determined. There's no doubt about that. I don't believe negotiations, mediation, or settlement does anything to resolve this issue. It just kicks the can down the road. The failure to solve this problem by prior boards is why we're still here and do not have a resolution yet. A judge's ruling has legal weight and will finally give a clear answer to the issue, and failure by either party to comply with that legal ruling has legal ramifications. That's it.
Thank you very much, Pat. Ron, would you like to comment?
Basically, it's in the court's hands. That's the direction that the community wants to continue to go, and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you very much for that. Ron, the question for you, how would you transform the ARC committee into an advisory role and limit powers to those deemed essential by the owners?
In my opinion, and if you travel throughout the community, we're a custom home community. And the homeowners invest a great deal of money in the home that they envision for their retirement or the home that they envision in the mountain. They should have the necessary support and the directions and the tools to be successful in building their dream home. Yes, we all have to live by the governing documents, but why don't we make those governing documents clearer, more concise, and use language that everybody can understand? And once that is clarified and you put that into place, then the process and people taking ownership, not only in their homes, but in the community, could be a positive thing. it takes a community, and I think with the right people involved, I think we can transform the community and the ARC committee and bylaws into one that everybody can understand and they'll be ready, available. We need, as an ARC committee, whether you're the chairman, the secretary, or one of the 3 remaining people on that committee, you need to be out front talking to the community. You need to be available to answer the community anytime. No question is a dumb question.
Thank
They
you,
need to
Ron.
be answered.
Thank you, Ron. Pat, do you want to comment?
Well, I would agree with that the architectural guidelines need to be clarified, and that's what I stated as my primary goal. I also, my experience has been that I think that all the guidelines should be voted on by the people. Any changes. In the past, changes have been made because people thought they were insignificant or non-material items, and that's probably the reason why the architectural guidelines are so nonsensical in some areas. So,
I might have a question.
that's all.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Claudio.
Yes, sir.
Over the last 2 years, approximately $130,000 in legal fees has been spent to end short-term rentals in Lone Mountain Shores. If elected, how much more are you willing to spend to resolve the issues in court?
So first, I don't know the veracity of the 130,000. I keep hearing that around. I think the last number that I saw officially was from the treasurer in June at 60,000. So, but let's assume that that's the number. To get to your question, I already agreed that I would abide by the rule, that I would not support spending further association money for appealing that. I said that. I think the 2 gentlemen to my left also said they would agree to the ruling. So here's a suggestion. Why don't we just stop everything and wait for the ruling? Stop spending lawyer money on both sides. Still work the board. Board is supposed to provide some documents to the master. I would suggest maybe the board still does that, but let's stop and let the court take its case. And then we save a lot of money on both sides.
Fred, would you like to comment?
Well, to answer the question that you actually asked, I'm not willing to spend any more. We have a lot of things we do on the mountain here now we use volunteers for, right? Why do we do that? To save money. Why pay somebody else to do something that we can do ourselves? Is that not the philosophy that we use for roadside mowing and landscaping and a lot of things these days? This applies too. We have the ability to solve this ourselves. What you got to understand is the covenants are a living document. So while we can make a ruling on it today, doesn't mean it stays that way. There's a lot of supporting documents that fall in underneath those covenants that change what those covenants mean on their written face value. Some of that is sworn testimony in the past by actual board members. Okay, so all that needs to be taken into consideration. I'm not willing to spend any.
Fred. Thank you, Fred. Stacy, if elected, what changes instituted by the current board do you view as positive for the community, and therefore, what would you be committed to maintain? Are there any changes that have been instituted within the community that you would like to see to revise or eliminate?
So, for this question, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because the current board is the only board that's been in place since I've lived here. One of the big changes, obviously, that had the greatest impact on the community is the board's decision to get clear interpretation from the Tennessee court system of whether short-term rentals are permitted or prohibited. And due to the long history of dispute between both sides, I believe a final judgment is necessary for our community to be able to move forward. Another change is voting, is the voting and disallowing proxies. And I told you I've done that. I'm for voting with a third-party CPA, independent third-party CPA. And with that, with absentee ballots for everyone, there is no reason for a proxy vote.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Ed, would you like to comment?
I guess my only thing would be, I still, and this is maybe I'm just not the educated one up here, but I still don't understand how a vote of the people to clearly define short-term rentals within the covenants isn't also a solution. But I think that would be a lower cost solution than a legal group that brings their own opinion down. But no. Good.
I think you'll have lawsuits either way.
Yes.
Thank you, Claudio. So let's come back to, Ed, again, coming back to the treasurer role. What is your view on the status of resident owners having equal or a larger say over non-residents? In the last 2 years, it appears part-time owners and vacant landowners have been marginalized in services and voice. How do you view those two?
Well, I mean, I don't know. So every lot owner should have one vote. We should all be equal, right? Like, the fact is, like, we can argue about short-term rentals or things like that, but, in the end, whether you're a resident or non-resident, there's things that you agree with across multiple different topics, right? Like, I know there are residents here that agree with vice versa. Anyway. I don't know that they've necessarily been marginalized. I do think that the current board has taken some liberties that have kind of pushed some narrative, and it's created some division within the community. I think that the adoption of electronic capabilities in order to keep people more informed that are maybe not capable of being here on a full-time basis, I think will help kind of make sure that everybody's at least informed in regard to what's going on. And then I think a board that's willing to go out and really listen to the people, right? Whether that be having votes or whether it be through surveys within the portal system or whatever the case may be, to get full access to people's opinions, so we know that we're moving as a community in the direction of the majority. I think that kind of solves a lot of it. But in the end, I think that as long as there's one vote per lot, no matter where you live or where you come from, I think that keeps things level, right?
Thank you. All right. Would you like to comment? Okay. I wanted to ask this question of each of you, and we'll just kind of go down the line if we could, and starting with you, Pat. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge currently facing Lone Mountain Shores, and how do you propose to address it?
I think the biggest problem is Lone Mountain Shores is a short-term rental issue, and I think that has to be resolved. Absolutely, 100% has to be resolved by a judicial ruling.
Stacy?
I agree. I believe that short-term rentals is the #1 issue. It's causing such division within the community. Social media sites have been created depicting our community as severely broken, and we're having very public, often very ugly discussions on there. It is clearly taking over this election. I mean, this is what this is all about. 3 out of the 5 questions that I had are about short-term rentals here. It has nothing to do with my qualifications of being a treasurer and doing a primary job. It has nothing to do with the fact that, I have a degree in accounting. I spent 10 years as a treasurer, 11 years prior to that as an auditor, auditing treasurers. We need resolutions so that we can move forward and go back to the business of doing business for this community.
Thank you. Claudio?
All my questions were about short-term rentals. There's a lot more in this community other than short-term rentals. Throughout, challenges as Ron had or I've had in this building, there's a lot of other issues. But I think resolving the short-term issues, regardless of which way it goes, and that's what I said in my statement, if short-term rentals are approved, there's a path forward. If they're not approved, there's a path forward. But we need to get that solved in a way that you can say, this is the judgment. This is not an opinion, it's not an interpretation, it's a judgment. And then we can go forward to address all the other things that the community cares.
Fred? Okay, agree, short-term rentals is a big issue, okay? But I want to point out, I just want to use an analogy for you for a second. If I write a document and I know what it means, would I go out and get a judge to tell me what they think it means or what it should mean? No. The covenants are our document. We write it. We make it say what we need it to say to satisfy the entire community. We don't need to take a document that we wrote and have somebody else tell us what it means. We get to say what it means. And a community vote of all members in a fair way is going to tell us what those governing documents should say. We don't need to spend $250,000 or $130,000 or even $60,000 to have somebody else tell us what our document says, the one that we write, the one that we wrote. Why would we need that? I don't think we do. I think we're all adults, we're all professional, we all afford very expensive homes on the mountain. We have the capability to do this ourselves. And that's the way it should be done. A community vote is what we've been pushing for since day one of this. A full community vote where everyone gets to say yes or no. Then there's no ambiguity. It is what it is. Okay? I'm willing to accept that. I think most short-term renters are also willing to accept that. And that's all we've ever asked for.
Thank you, Fred. Ed?
So I'm probably the oddball up here again. I don't know that this is necessarily. I understand short-term rentals is the scab, if you will. It's the inflection point. But the truth of the matter is, I think the biggest issue here for Flowmount Shores is process moving forward, right? I agree with Claudio that, you know, whether or not short-term rentals are allowed or not allowed, we have a path moving forward. We'll come together again, I promise. I agree with Stacy. Like, this should be about credentials. Like, what ideas do you have? Well, how are you going to make things better moving forward, right? That's what we all want. And what I guess I mean by process is this. Like, I agree with Fred as well. Like, we are our own community, right? So we should vote. And there's no reason we can't clearly define short-term rentals. And that's whether they exist or they don't exist. I don't care. Make it to a situation where it's so clear that there is no reason for a judge to weigh in later or additional lawsuits in the future, right? Like, and I think it's a waste of money. It's a waste of resources, right? I would also add that I also believe that what's coming as our biggest problem is just growth. Like it or not, we're growing. Like, look at New Tazewell. Like, they're growing. Like, there's a new thing going in down close by Jimmy's, right? That's going to cause more growth. Like, people want to be here. It's a wonderful place. It's tranquil. It's serene. I love being at the lake. I can be here every day if allowed, right? And people see that, and they're going to continue to build. Like, I can't remember what I saw heard. 20 houses are being built or something like that annually, right? Do the numbers. There's 160 plus houses. 10 years from now, we're going to double, right? And when you double, you're going to lean on those resources, whether it be marina, or trash, whatever the case may be. Regardless of short-term rentals, we're going to be a more crowded community, and we got to come together. And I think it starts the process.
Thank you, Ed.
My apologies for going long.
Ron?
I'm really going to go off in a different way. Change, and how we deal with change as a community. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have. And what's one of those things that a common theme I hear is how are we going to communicate that to the community? Not just the residents on the mountain, not just the part-time residents, but all residents. The lot owners are just as important as we that live here every day. They pay their taxes, they pay their annual dues, and they should have an equal say. They make a choice whether they do or they do not. But they should be given that opportunity. Change is going to happen. Change is how we deal with it. You know, that's what I think is our biggest challenge. I can't control the courts. That has already been set in motion. How the community accepts that change or deals with the change is what I would like to try and address. You know, communication, transparency, collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. All right, for our final question before we go for a break, I'm going to go back to the original numbering of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the numbers that you pulled out of the hat in the beginning. And I will ask you basically the question as to you are being elected to a position on the board and why you are the best candidate for that position. So starting with you, Ed, why should you be elected as treasurer the next 2 years?
Well, if we're just going for qualifications, I've been in finance for longer than I like to admit, a little over 20 years. So I'm well experienced as it relates to P&Ls and reporting and taxes and implications as it relates to, you know, financial impact to organizations. And I look at the HOA as an organization as a whole. I have worked and currently volunteer on the finance committee for the Mother Teresa School Board. So from an experience standpoint, I come with, I think, a sufficient amount in order to make sure that we are in a financial situation in a to put us in a positive phase moving forward. But outside of that, listen, my wife will tell you, this is our happy place, right? I want to see this maintain a happy place, right? So I wish I could be down here more. I'll tell you guys right now, I have 7 kids, 7 grandkids. They pull me in a lot of different directions. I'm sure you guys are in similar situations. I will be here every step that I can. I'll be here electronically when I can. But I want what's great for the community. I also feel like I'm an approachable guy, right? So you guys can come up, you can tell me what you think, what we need. And I guess the last thing I'll say before my 90 seconds is up is I do believe in transparency, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I think it should be a living, breathing document. I think each one of you guys should know the numbers as well as I know the numbers. I don't mind you guys calling me and saying, Eddie, there's a $50 Taco Bell charge on the P&L. Why is that? You know, from a balance standpoint. Yeah, let's have that conversation.
Good. Thank you, Ed. And I'll interject the question to both of the candidates for treasurer. Do you have a working knowledge of QuickBooks?
I do, yes.
Okay. All right. Fred Maess, you're number 2.
Well, I'm sure you've all read my bio. Educationally, I have a master's in business administration and organizational leadership, strangely enough. I've been leading companies for 30 years, multi-million-dollar companies, $50 million companies. I know what it takes to run an organization. I know what it takes to interact with local officials. I know what it takes to get this whole your workplace so that you can create the workplace that you want them to have, or that they want to have. And that's what I think a lot of is what's missing in our community. I have a lot of organizational skills in leadership and conflict management, and it's extensive, and I think I can bring that to the community and help us move forward. I had another thought, but
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. Pat?
Well, first of all, I am a professional architect, or was. That has to be a requirement for the position. But I do have experience in construction and design, and I've been able to help a lot of people with questions. And you might not know, but I get tons of emails, and I get tons of phone calls and texts about questions about how to build in this community. I've been here since 1998. I was one of the first people to buy down in here. I've seen all the growth. I've seen all the problems. I've seen the road conditions. I've seen everything pretty much, what's going on. I've been helping people as they go. I don't give them advice, but I sort of suggest things for them to think about and try to protect them as they get into the construction process. This mountain is moving in places. There's some places you would ever want to build in this mountain, and I can show that to you. People complain about the loss of property value, but the reason why you lose your property value here is because there's things that you never saw before you bought the property. So I just think I'm the best. I have the experience, and I do help people as much as I can.
Thank you, Pat. Ron?
Well, wow. Why do I think I'm the best candidate? I think I can listen. I think I can make a difference. Early in my military career, I was asked whether I was part of the problem or part of the solution. I was going to answer that question on the spot, but I was told, think about it. I've thought about this for the last 3 years. I volunteered my services for the Art Liaison 2 years ago. And then I volunteered my services for the Vice President. And this is the last time, 3 strikes and you're out. I think I can listen to the people. I can use my experiences from not just the military, but my own experiences here on the mountain and the obstacles and the challenges that I've experienced. Do I have an architectural background? No. But I can read blueprints. I can lead schematics. I had to do that in the military. I had to come up with budgets. I had to come up with operating instructions. The military we do a lot of things, and it's just not go out and fight. We deal with people. We deal with crises. We have to be able to formulate clear and concise directions. I think I can do that. I think with the right...
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I have the background to run this organization and help manage as the president of the board, masters and 3 years of PhD level studies, ran businesses, ran military organizations. Running the board is not a challenge. The challenge will be, taking care and bringing everybody together and having a solution forward. I believe that I have a solution forward regardless of which way the judgment goes. And my promise to you will be to have the interests of the community first and foremost. Whether it's with short-term rentals or anything else, to look at liabilities, look at risk, which are considerable, and those would be my considerations. I do not have a financial or a personal interest in short-term rentals. There's no way I can have any influence or conflict of interest in that regard. I will work for the community.
All right. Thank you, Claudia. Stacy?
When I was approached by a few people to consider doing this, I thought, well, I can. I'm absolutely qualified. I have an accounting degree. I've done treasury work for years, over a decade, and I started as an auditor, auditing school districts and all other businesses. And I have some tax experience too. I will not do this. So I have plenty of the experience. I've reached out to the current treasurer just to see what does exactly entail, because I still do work, and I run a school district in New York. So when I left New York, I was a treasurer of a $100 million school district, and I said, see you, and they said, you can't. So I worked for them for a year. I came here, I made it work. So virtually, we can do it.
Totally.
I would love to say you can't do this, but you can. I mean, there's some issues with separation of duties and stuff to have internal controls, but you can definitely do it. But I'm qualified. I'm also, it's also just one way for me to be able to give back to the community. We've been here for a year and a half, and it's just brought me so much joy. I think I can do it, and I think I can do a good job.
Thank you. And Stacy, I'll ask the same question of you that I did of Ed. Do you have a working knowledge?
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. We're at the end of our first session. We'll give everyone about 15 minutes to go to the bathroom, grab something to eat. You would fill out the 3x5 cards with any of your questions and put those in the basket. We'll kind of go through and we'll reconvene in about 15-20 minutes. Thanks.